Looks like we got folks joining in from all over the place today. We got folks out of Europe, Ireland, the UK. One of our Italian partners actually may join as well. We also have folks, I saw the list coming out of the US, Canada. Welcome, welcome everyone. How are you guys today, Mark and Lawrence?
Yeah, very good, thank you. It's lovely to see such representation from around the world. So no, great. Look forward to talking to you today.
Great, Vince. Thanks very much for having us on this call.
Definitely. Looking forward to showcasing what you guys do at Rubik and how we collaborate to solve unique challenges for our customers. All right, we'll give it another 30 seconds here. We're just about 1 minute in past our start time. Make sure folks are joining. Welcome if there's some new folks who have just joined. I'm calling in from Ottawa, Canada. Quite cold here today. We're negative 20 degrees, so we're an icebox, but we're managing all right. And we have Mark and Lawrence out of Ireland. We'll get going in a moment here. All right, I think we're ready to go. Well, thanks everyone for joining. Really appreciate you taking the time. We're really excited to showcase Rubik and how we work together on solving a lot of the unique challenges in the manufacturing space. We're going to be covering customizing your tech stack, the power of native integrations, and an open API. So let's get right into the agenda, give you guys an idea of what we're covering today. We'll do some quick introductions. We'll chat about who we are, what we do at our companies. Who is Rubik? Mark will give us a good overview of that, of the type of work they do, type of customers they work with, and why we recommend Katana from a Katana perspective and from a partner perspective, and the type of challenges that a lot of our companies that we work with face and how we solve for those challenges. Beyond that as well, we'll also talk about the power of collaboration. At Katana, we take a partner-driven ecosystem approach, and we leverage partners we really leverage partners for our growth and to solve a lot of the unique challenges that we face in the inventory and manufacturing space. Then lastly, I'm going to talk a bit more about our partner-driven ecosystem approach on how our long-term growth plan is really to leverage our partners, and we see you guys as an extension of our team. And I think we'll really showcase that today. So I'm Vince Dobson, a partner manager here at Katana. So I manage a lot of our commercial relationships with manufacturing experts, inventory, operations. I also work with various e-commerce agencies and HubSpot agencies. Lawrence, how about you introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Lawrence Andrews. I'm Solutions Director here at Rubik. I suppose first and foremost, I'm responsible for delivering kind of innovative solutions that meet challenges that our customers face today. That has to be the starting point, but also to sort of look towards the future to say, well, actually, how can businesses use data and technology to stand out in their industry and market, because that's what's going to allow people to differentiate themselves. And the second part of that, I suppose, is what are practical ways to actually do that, because we're working in the small to mid market, and you have to take slightly different approaches than you might take if you were tackling these challenges in an enterprise context. So yeah, that's my role. And yeah, hand over to colleague Mark.
Thanks, Lawrence. My name is Mark Flynn. I'm one of the co-founders and managing director here at Rubik. My job at Rubik is to represent the voice of the customer and make sure that our customers' needs and expectations are represented internally for our solutions team that is under Lawrence and our delivery team that's under my other colleague, Rob. I'm an industry veteran. I've been in the ERP transformation space for the last 20 years. Predominantly working for large enterprises, but for the last 5 years, I've been following my passion of helping to bring simple, scalable solutions to the SME sector.
Great, Mark.
So who is Rubik? So we are an award-winning IT services and solutions business. We were founded 5 years ago and have been a Katana partner since we started. So it's been a great journey being a partner with Katana for the last number of years and helping to firstly take the initial product out to customers, watch the product evolve through customer feedback, and helping now to extend the product to meet specific customer scenarios. We're 10 consultants based in the UK and Ireland. We are small but mighty. We service a number of different industries across the world and have engaged in a number of different types of transformation products or transformation projects using Katana and other tools. Our specialty is in complex integration challenges. We really search out manufacturers, engineering businesses, and construction businesses that have complex landscapes. So you're thinking legacy technology, a number of integration points, and more often than not enough time to be able to stop the day-to-day BAU and drive transformation. They need solutions today, and they need them quickly. As I said, we're passionate about simple, effective, and easy solutions. The reason we love Katana is we think it is one of the most usable products in the marketplace, and similar to ourselves, a small but mighty tool. It's easy to use, easy to implement, and easy to extend, which my colleague Lawrence is going to talk to you about on today's webinar. And lastly, we are all about proven solutions designed for success. So we focus our time in building out industry-ready templates that we can apply time after time to customer problems to help them get accelerated time to value and increase their productivity.
Great, Mark. Appreciate the overview. And I think, we've collaborated on a number of projects, and working with you guys, on video calls. One thing that's underrated, and I don't think is listed here, is you guys always bring that Irish charm, that positive attitude, and the solution oriented. So keep that coming. We really love it, and you're a pleasure to collaborate with. Wonderful. So now we're going to go into the challenges that a lot of these inventory companies face, or companies that have inventory needs. So one of the main challenges that I often see is, businesses that are scaling, they'll often have their sales channels, receiving orders in different sales channels, managing those separately. With Katana, it comes under one place where you have all your sales demand from all your different sales channels, which really allows you to appropriately manage your inventory, or maybe even prioritize. Say you have a customer that is very important, you want to put them to the top of the list. It also gives teams, full visibility of all their demand to be able to make the right decisions around inventory and building products and so on. Lawrence, I know obviously your main role is solving challenges for these businesses. Can you maybe elaborate on a couple examples and how you've helped solve some of the challenges of the businesses that we mutually?
Yeah. You talk about a couple of things we commonly observe, right? So when we're going to customers, I suppose there's two scenarios that we often see. Sometimes we've got customers that are that have a number of kind of isolated systems, and there are a number of kind of legacy issues that you kind of attach to those sorts of situations around data quality, usability, or just general adoption of the technology in general. Or we see whole business systems built off paper and Excel, actually doing some quite elaborate things, but the business, that is the foundation of the business. And sometimes we kind of see those two approaches kind of coexisting, which obviously has inherent inefficiency. I suppose how that kind of manifests from an inventory management point of view is, inventory is fundamental and central to kind of the successful operation of kind of manufacturing distribution businesses. So, what we see is we see finance systems disconnected from production systems or disconnected from warehouse management systems. And that means no one really has ownership of inventory, and no one really has a clear picture of that. You get manual stock takes, you get consumption, isn't tracked at a macro level. So they know what they've made and they know what they've used in a monthly basis, but they don't have any more detailed insight than that. So I think, one of the fundamental challenges we're trying to address, and why we really like Katana actually, is because by getting that inventory management piece in the center, it enables so many other efficiencies to be delivered in other areas around, connected to purchasing, sales, fulfillment, and the list could go on. But yeah, that's usually kind of what we see when we enter clients, and obviously the impact that has.
Very good. Very good insight there. Real life examples of what you see out there. So, and I think like another big challenge that we see these businesses face is scaling. Mark kind of hinted to it early in the conversation, but with traditional solutions, often they're old, they're bloated. It's really hard to attach new technologies to them. Kind of what Lawrence just kind of mentioned there. But with Katana, you have a great foundation of your inventory, manufacturing management. But let's say you are a growing business, you want to go into e-commerce. Well, perfect. We have an integration with Shopify or WooCommerce where you can easily connect your inventory and sync it back and forth between your e-commerce platform. Or say you're a B2B business and you're starting to take on a lot of customers and you need a CRM system. Well, we have tools like our native integration with HubSpot that it syncs back and forth your inventory and sales deals. And beyond that, our open API really allows people to leverage and connect really any sort of tool they need to Katana. Lawrence, maybe you can elaborate a little bit more. I mean, you've kind of
Yeah.
hinted, but the scaling of businesses, how do you see Katana really helping that side of
Yeah,
things?
again, just to try and tie it back to, what we see when we're actually, we enter through the door of these businesses and start to understand how they're working is, I would say, and in my opinion, traditional solutions or software and implementation methods are skewed to creating kind of siloed systems. They just are, which means there's no real accountability for the role of that individual system within an organization as a whole. And that's what creates these disconnects between different departments, and as a result, limits the flow of data between different areas, and actually results in the information that areas need either not reaching them at all or reaching them much later than it is needed. So I suppose what we quite like about, well, what we really love about Katana and tools in this space is that, they're not trying to be the one size fits all solution to every problem. They're doing what, you're a solution that does what you do, and you do it really well, and you understand that you exist within a wider ecosystem, and you make it easier for that tool to live within a wider ecosystem through a combination of native integrations, which are incredibly useful for small and medium-sized businesses who, don't necessarily have the capabilities to build custom integration layers, and things like that. So I think that wider ecosystem piece is key, and usability trumps everything, I think. But doing
Yeah.
that in a way that isn't the expense of capability. I think Katana is highly capable, but has managed it whilst remaining usable.
Definitely get a lot of feedback that our tool is one of the most user-friendly out there. And also, like, as these businesses scale, typically with like some traditional tools, you start getting charged a lot more. And with us, as you move up plans, you're not incurring that many more costs as you scale, which is also a big deal. Right on. Now, we spoke a lot about, at a business high level, the business overall, what are the challenges they face? How are we solving for those? But the actual individuals within those companies, how are they, leveraging Katana to become more efficient, to optimize their operations? Perfect example is accountants. We have a great partner program on the accountant side because accountants love working with us, because Katana syncs with those, let's say QuickBooks Online or Xero, and provides real-time financial information about your inventory, which allows businesses to make the right decisions and have real-time data and financial information, at their fingertips. Mark, you're often on site with these folks in their warehouses or facilities. Once you're implemented Katana, you've helped them build out their operational workflows. Where are you seeing the most impact, in these different positions internally of where Katana is really helping out?
Yeah, so I suppose the first big benefit that my customers talk to me about is visibility. So I spend a lot of time, particularly with the executives and the accountants, and they're looking to drive visibility into product margins in particular. So they want to know that the cost of production is as per what they have built their bill of materials on. And Katana makes that super easy through the dashboard functionality to just get that clean view on exactly how much it's costing to build your product, and drive a little bit further in terms of which products are generating the most margin for you. Then when it comes to the procurement team, they're able to see in real time the demand based on the sales forecasts and the actual sales within the system coming down the pipe, what they need to order and when. And then coupling that with the lead time functionality, they're able to plan out procurement in a just-in-time process to make sure that their manufacturing team have the right raw material whenever they need to produce the goods that they need to produce. Then from manufacturing and the warehouse team, the big things that my customers are saying to me from the folks on the floor is, we want something that is simple, easy to use, that we can give the back office the information they need. So from a shop floor functionality perspective, they're able to easily start and stop jobs, enter consumption in there, and be able to feed the information that the back office needs to optimize the execution or optimize the production in real time, easily, quickly, and without too much overhead. So all in all, I think all of those areas are serviced with slightly complementary, but different areas of benefits from the system.
And I would agree with that as well, and probably add a further point to say that, you know, for any system to really work, it needs to work at every level of an organization, and it also has to connect them. And so there's kind of connecting it in the context of the types of areas we see on the slides, but there's also thinking about it from a bottom up. So thinking about, you know, how information is captured from source at operator level, and how we make operators' lives as easy as possible. Because actually, if you don't get that part right, no other part of the system will function correctly, either in the back office in terms of touching on the points around forecasting that Mark mentioned there, and also at management level, because there simply isn't the trust in the data that they see. So yeah, again, the way that Katana has applied sort of those user-centered design principle to the whole of its product means that, you know, you can actually have more faith in the system, because it is that bit easier to adopt and use than some of the other options out there.
Wonderful. And I think another benefit is, you know, you can have as many users as you want with Katana. So, you know, you're not paying per head. So it allows these different folks, you know, like Mark and Lawrence mentioned, they can all be involved in working with the tool, and really helps with optimizing operations and efficiency. Wonderful. Well, now I really think we started to showcase to you guys, you know, how working with Katana and Rubik together, we can really solve a lot of challenges. This gives you more of a visual of really typically like an example of who's working on what. So, you know, we're partnering to solve today's manufacturing challenges, and Katana will bring that, you know, advanced inventory management tool that has forecasting, inventory planning, production planning, scheduling, and shop floor data collection. You know, we provide a great solution, but, you know, beyond that, businesses need sometimes support, be it through strategic implementations, customized integrations, or also making sure that they're operationally using the tool to its full extent. Mark, I'd love you kind of expand on that side of things. We've kind of touched on it already, but maybe, you know, based off these bullet points, you can kind of elaborate a little bit more on, you know, how you guys help with that side of people's businesses, partner with Katana.
Yeah, so we help our customers build digital architectures or digital strategies around best of breed pillars, of which we consider Katana being a foundational pillar for their success. So, you know, past that, there are certain scenarios, certain edge cases, certain behaviors within different organizations that require a level of customization. And Katana is one of the tools that we find easiest to work with in terms of providing that level of customization for our customers. And that can be in the form of customized workflows, as we have written down here, or just slightly different interfaces for how data can be captured, or 9 times out of 10, integrating Katana with another system, whether it is a legacy finance system or a finance system that isn't within the partner ecosystem. So, you know, I suppose the thing I'd like folks to take away from this session is, you know, Katana as a foundational pillar to a successful digital transformation is something that we have proven time and time again. And then we use the tool and its complementary partner ecosystem, or even our own customizations, to drive operational excellence. And what we mean by operational excellence is using data and using systems to improve the bottom line, make people's day-to-day work life easier, and to focus more on the customer. So we try to package it all up together, but if you think about Katana as the foundation, and then we are the gravy or the icing on top.
That's it. And you could really, I think this really showcases now how, you know, we really leverage our partners to, you know, drive solutions for our mutual customers. And this is our long-term approach. You know, like Mark said earlier, we're not trying to build every single feature in the book, but we're going to be leveraging our partners to, you know, build unique use cases. And even longer term, let's say that's a use case that could be used for our wider audience of customers. Well, let's talk about potentially building an integration into our integration marketplace. And we're having a lot of those conversations with current partners right now. Wonderful. Now we're going to dive into an actual real life example. So, you know, with Katana and Rubik working together, we support, you know, advanced client manufacturing workflows. And Rubik, it was about, you know, I guess months back, they showcased us one of their new tools that they built. And we thought, hey, this is awesome. This is a great opportunity for us to maybe do a webinar and showcase to our audience, you know, how we can collaborate together, and Rubik can really solve for those unique use cases that we may not be able to solve, you know, with our out of the box features. Lawrence, how about you take it away here and run us through this?
Absolutely. Yeah, so I suppose one of the great things about Katana, which we talked about, is it's quick to set up and easy to use. And that's kind of true of SaaS products as a whole. And I suppose one of the ways that they achieve that is by focusing on configuration versus customization. But linking back to that kind of discussion around traditional solutions earlier on, that's sometimes used against SaaS products because, buyers are used to getting exactly what they want or have experience of getting exactly what they want if they're prepared to pay for it, for the pros and cons of that, right? So that can sometimes, we see sometimes that can lead businesses down a path of thinking that that they need a more expensive, more complex software package than they actually really need, because they don't see another alternative to meeting those requirements. So I think, and sometimes that's where SaaS tools and custom requirements can kind of butt heads, because they go, well, this is about configuration, it's about you changing, not about the tool changing. And there's a large degree of truth in that. But I suppose the other side of it is there are genuine custom requirements for businesses based on their, the particular industry they're in, the particular market they're in, the particular customers they have. Like, that's a reality. So if we accept those kind of custom requirements, not all of them, but if we accept that they exist, then the next question is, well, actually, is a large scale enterprise solution the only approach, or are there other ways we can look at this problem? And that's what we've tried to do, I suppose, by thinking about, well, Katana is a great system. It operates within a wider ecosystem. It's got a robust set of APIs. So how can we use those to address some of these custom requirements? And what we've done is we've coupled those with low-code platform technologies, because we can see obviously real clear benefits there in terms of that kind of citizen developer model where you can again build custom bespoke solutions pretty quickly, pretty cost effectively, and even if you're using an implementer to build that for you, you can train on those systems, you can understand them, and you can maintain them without having to sort of develop in-house technology teams. And that's exactly what we've done with Katana and some of the customers. So we've tried to understand where those custom requirements exist and look at ways that we can address that or complement Katana's feature set to address those. So just to talk to some examples of what I mean by that, so some real life examples. So we actually extended Katana with an application or a suite of applications really built on the Bubble platform. And what we were able to do there is tackle a couple of uses. So one of the use cases there was around guided processes. So we have manufacturing operations, but actually specific manufacturing operations, there are a couple of additional prompts that are useful to the operator that's carrying out that operation, because it's not always the same operator. There is some in certain manufacturing contexts, you're working with temporary staff, you're getting people in. So how can we deliver that sort of information at the station to the operator? Another thing I think that is fundamental to this is, and where I think you're always going to get custom requirements, is around information capture. And there are genuine needs for example, the quality space. So if you're checking in a delivery into stock, into inventory, there are potentially additional checks that you'll need to carry out, which often happen on a completely different system or potentially happen on a clipboard and get written up onto an Excel spreadsheet later, because they're so specific to each individual business. And it's the same for kind of manufacturing processes as well. Particular operations have particular requirements for information, and that could be compliance for particular certifications that a business may have. It might be quality standards and how they're showing they're meeting their ISOs, or it might be things that customers have specifically asked for. So again, what we can do is extend the shop floor app that Katana has to say, okay, well, if you're delivering that manufacturing order and you're on that operation, what additional information do I need to capture? And we can capture that and we can link it in a database level. We can link it to the manufacturing order that's being executed. So you've got that full traceability really of all of the traceability and information and data and the richness of that in Katana with anything else you need to capture. And obviously then you can start to connect those in reporting if needed. I suppose another application is sort of custom views and functions. So I'm not necessarily saying functions that don't exist in Katana, because they do exist in Katana, otherwise it wouldn't be possible to do it. But it's coming back to that principle we talked about earlier, is it's the best way to make a system successful is to make it as easy as possible for everyone to use it and make their life more enjoyable. And it sounds like a cliche thing to say, but it's so true. So, and on that basis, how can we design views that are specifically tailored to the individuals or the types of individuals that are using them? So that might be in a particular part of the warehouse, looking at a particular part of the inventory and helping them be able to adjust stock, withdraw stock, print batch labels, see what's expiring first. So again, it's just simple manipulation of data that we can pull from Katana APIs. We can deliver very focused views and actually actions to individuals, either in the factory or in the warehouse. So yeah, just a few examples. And there's a couple of screenshots there of just some of the things that we've done. So give you a sense of what we're talking about when we say extending cloud tools. And actually, you can start to see that the gap between a cloud tool, a SaaS tool, and a fully customized ERP perhaps isn't so great when you start to think about it in this context.
Yes, very good. And I think this absolutely showcases, where we can leverage our partners. And a lot of these businesses, they're going towards that best of breed tech stack. It's really what they're going for now because, they're able to use the foundation of our tool, but then, leverage a partner like Katana that can build that specific need, like the specific feature for that specific use case versus going towards an enterprise solution where there's, maybe a lot more features that you're paying for that you don't even need. So we're seeing this more and more, and there's even potential to eventually, build some of these customizations into an integration for our wider customer base. So I think this really showcases the value that our partners bring, and we were quite impressed with what you guys did here and really wanted to showcase it.
Vince, I think as well, just to highlight,
Yeah.
In terms of the comparison of a best of breed solution, so a Katana plus an extension versus an all-in-one, is it's delivered at a fraction of the cost at a fraction of the time.
Yes.
So if you think about a large ERP implementation, you are 6 to 7 figures depending on the size of your organization. I mean, we can together deliver similar, if not better, functionality in a fraction of the time and a fraction of that cost. And that's what really appeals to the customers we work with. They want solutions that solve their problems today, that don't cost an arm and a leg, and that kind of will build as the company scales.
Definitely. Thanks for elaborating on that. And great. So we'll jump in our last slide here. And I think, today we really showcased the power of collaborating with partners in Katana, and how we're really taking an ecosystem-driven approach. Like long-term, our goal is to continue leveraging our partners. We see you guys as extensions of our teams, and I think we've really showcased that today. That with Katana and a strong partner like Rubik, we can really solve a lot of the unique challenges businesses have in a far more efficient and cost-effective way. And for our audience here that's on the call, if you're a partner of ours already and you haven't spoke to us for a while, and this is kind of spurred some ideas and you'd like to sync up, we'd love to speak with you. Definitely reach out. Our integration marketplace is going to be easier and easier to bring in new integrations in. We'd love to talk about that. If you're potentially a customer or potentially a new partner that hasn't spoken to us yet but was interested in joining the webinar, absolutely reach out. We'd love to hear about the challenges the businesses you work with or your business is facing. Figure out the best solution for you of how we can address those. And just keep in mind, we are partner driven and we want to grow with our partners. So anytime you may come over a use case or a solution that you're building, run it by us. We want to hear about it. And maybe we'll be doing a webinar with one of you all in the near future as well. So before I wrap it up here and go to the Q&A, any last thoughts, Lawrence or Mark, before we get to the Q&A?
I think for me, Vince, it's just about trying to think outside the box when it comes to delivering solutions from customers. I mean, we live in a world now where SaaS products like Katana, local products like Bubble, which we use often, and then into the future, AI. You don't have to deploy monolithic solutions to your problems anymore. You should think about how you can use industry proven foundations and then build upon them to your specific requirements. You're more likely to get the answer you need in a faster time frame for a fraction of the cost.
Definitely.
Yeah, just one more from me, a final one from me. We talked
absolutely.
we talked earlier about how Katana has been built and accepts its role within a wider ecosystem, I think it's really important as partners and implementers of technology solutions that we adopt those same principles throughout how we approach both the design and development of solutions, so that when we're looking and we're working with businesses, we're we're making sure that we're very clear on the role of each individual component of a solution with an organization, how it works, how information flows, how it meets people's requirements, how it works for them. And I think if we can apply those same principles to how we approach things and how we build products, then I think, the future's bright for the SME space.
Wonderful, guys. Well, very appreciate all the insight you provided. I think it was extremely valuable, especially for our partner community. So let's get right to the Q&A. Awesome. So guys, there's a chat box where you can enter any questions. I had a couple questions ready that we had that we were going to lay out right away, but we'll just start with one here. So with Mark, I'd love to hear, what are the type of tech stacks that you're seeing with the customers you work with? Maybe, name the type of industry and maybe give a few examples of what is like an ideal tech stack or a common tech stack you see when we're using that best of breed approach. What are you seeing out there?
So for small and medium sized manufacturing customers across any particular vertical, really, we're trying to pair off a accounting or finance system like Xero or QuickBooks with Katana. I mean, that is our opening salvo, and we are more than likely replacing some form of on-premise legacy ERP solution. Post that, depending on specific needs, we will extend out around Katana for quality or interfacing with the machines to read back real-time information from the production systems. And then from a CRM perspective or an order management perspective, 9 times out of 10, we would be HubSpot or Pipedrive as a standard stack. Lawrence, I'm not sure whether you would disagree or whether you would have a different opinion on that.
No, I actually think that's commonly what we see. I think it's a pretty good representation of the needs of the customers in our space, at least.
Great. We've had a lot of questions as well about native integrations. So we have an incredible integration marketplace. Some of them are third party. We're constantly rolling out more and more native integrations. And we often get the question, what's coming next? So, Amazon, for example, that's coming up next. We already have a third party integration, but that's a big one that we believe is going to be quite effective. So native integration with Amazon. We're also improving our Shopify and QuickBooks integration, improving on customer feedback, as well as HubSpot. We rolled out our HubSpot integration, which is actually the leading inventory integration with HubSpot at the moment. And it's been quite effective, and we've seen a lot of success already with a number of clients. Looks like we got a couple maybe questions or raised hands here. I'll let Mark or Lawrence take those.
Yeah, cool. Lawrence, do you want to kick off? Go ahead.
Yeah, I was interested. So the question is, where do you see manufacturing industry heading, or the manufacturing industry heading, and what the key technologies businesses will be using? It's good. Obviously, sort of one. It's a question we spend a lot of time debating as a business. Now, I suppose where we see a number of businesses is they're still kind of in the SME space. How do I describe this? They are kind of in a stage of digital enablement, and that's where we're trying to put digital tools, as I said earlier, in the hands of operators to make their jobs easier and collect the right sort of data that we need to capture at source to generate the insights we need to generate to improve business, whether that being forecasting sales, forecasting purchasing, optimizing manufacturing processes. Kind of that's the stage a lot of businesses are at. So you kind of ask yourself, okay, well, what is the next stage from that? And I think the next stage from that is starting to think about how you're feeding that data into kind of centralized data platforms. And I think this applies to the SME space completely. Right? So feeding that information from Katana and potentially other systems into centralized data platform. From a manufacturing perspective, it becomes extremely interesting to think about how you can leverage IoT to get more other information off the floor in terms of asset usage, equipment usage, and how you can kind of relate the two worlds that or two sets of data that you're seeing. And I think from there, that's where you start to move into a really interesting space where you say, okay, well, if I have the data in one place that represents the operation of my business, then there's lots of things I can do, be it AI applications, simulation, adaptive systems, and I think these are the sorts of pathways. It sounds kind of quite futuristic, but this is exactly the path that SME manufacturers need to be on now, and we spend a lot of our time kind of really championing. I don't know if there's anything you would add to that, Mark, as well.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'd agree with a lot of that. I mean, I think at the pace of change that technology is going through, I think there's going to be a David and Goliath scenario in manufacturing. In fact, there is already today where small job shops and small manufacturers are eating the lunch of the larger manufacturers because they're much more nimble, agile, innovative, because they're adopting tools like Katana, Zero, uh, Shopify, whatever it might be, to compete in a larger scale with little or with fewer resources. So I think that's an interesting one to watch. I think the follow on from that is then integrated supply chains. So with systems like Katana that are have an open API that can connect to multiple systems, it's not too far to think that orders could be placed in an ecosystem from one Katana instance to another relatively easily, and you do see some of that in the construction industry. And then lastly would be, what is AI going to bring from a production planning, predictive forecasting, bill of materials generation? That is bound to shake up the industry in a significant way, but you're only going to be able to leverage that if you have your data set in one single source of the truth, and that's what a tool like Katana would bring. There's a question here from Francis. I just want to get into, Lawrence, Vince, you might be able to help me with. Does Katana only work with manufacturing companies? How can Katana benefit a service-based company like ours that provides fencing services?
Yeah, so I'd say a good portion of our customers, the ideal ICP, ideal customer profile, I think is really those who do manufacture and have like recipe-based or a product assembly associated. Although we do work with a number of companies that use us strictly for inventory management for multiple locations. So you could use our product to, think ordering your material to your warehouse if it's a finished good, scanning it, putting in the right location of your warehouse, and then having that inventory come online on Katana, and then being able to fulfill your orders accordingly and maybe order more product as you need. So the answer is yes. If there's a product assembly, it helps even more. I would say we're even more valuable, but absolutely, we work with a good portion of customers who only use us strictly for the inventory side of our business.
Lawrence, any follow-up or?
Yeah, no, I'd agree. I was just thinking through how you do it, but I think there's, thinking of fencing services, not that I know too much about it, but as a combination of, you're providing you need an amount of material to do a job, and then there's an amount of service that you need to provide. These have quantities and values, however you look at them. So on that basis, I think there are potential applications for a tool like Katana to help with that.
Absolutely. And I would extend it for the field service element of job tracking and sending folks out to build fences and wherever it might be using a tool like Bubble. So Katana is absolutely suited for that challenge. Last question, how is Brexit affecting manufacturers in the UK, and is it making this more difficult for local manufacturers? So I'll kick off on that one. It has made it more difficult for local manufacturers because they are required to comply with additional customs controls, both on import and export, saying that that tide has passed in terms of paying, and there are processes in place to allow that to continue, and a lot of the cost has been borne. I think where tools like Katana will help going forward is when those government systems for customs control become a little bit more intelligent and offer their own APIs, you'll be able to link your dispatch directly to that platform so that you can go and register your export or your import or wherever it might be directly from a tool like Katana on your dispatch or registering your sales. So I think that once the government systems catch up in terms of being open and able to be integrated with, the paper-based customs processing that Brexit has brought about will be removed, and the costs will hopefully come down a little bit in complementary to that. Lawrence, anything else?
No, I think you've, as you say, like there's been a lot of time has passed now in terms of adjusting those processes, but it like everything, it comes down to information capture, both for, like you say, import and export. And I think once you've got that right, it can just ease the burden of preparing that paperwork and preparing that information. If, again, like we talked about earlier, you're capturing that information at source, so it becomes easier to generate the necessary paperwork before you're dispatching something, as an example. So yeah, there are solutions to make it easier, but I think the main pain is passed.
Yeah. There's one last question here I just want to acknowledge, just around field service component for the fencing company. So just so I'm clear, to my knowledge, Vince, you might correct me if I'm wrong, Katana doesn't have a field service component today, but I mean, you could use a tool like we used in the example Lawrence gave called Bubble to build in a field service component and use Katana as your inventory management. Could it handle van stock? You could extend it to do that. Whether you'd want to, you'd need to get into the detail a bit more. But look, for Francis and the anonymous attendee who asked those questions, happy to be contacted offline to go in that in a bit more detail. Vince, I'm not sure if we're sharing contact details after this or.
Yeah, definitely. We're going to send it. Absolutely. We're going to send an email out to everyone. And yeah, regarding the fencing question, definitely, like I would want to look a little more into it before I provide my insight. Definitely something I want to kind of explore myself. So I think you did a good job of answering it there, Mark, but absolutely reach out to us. We want to hear what your use case is, and I think there's typically a solution for it. So awesome. Is that all for questions, guys?
Yep, from what I can see.
Great. Well, everyone, we really appreciate you guys attending the webinar. Also really appreciate Rubik coming on and providing us a lot of insight about how we collaborate and solve a lot of challenges in the manufacturing and inventory space. And yeah, that's it. So we will be following up with a recording of the call. And if there's any questions that come out of this, definitely the fencing one, I think we're going to try to find your name and get in touch with you directly. Feel free to reach out. We'd love to connect. So thanks again for your time, Rubik. Thanks you guys, Mark, Lawrence, and until next time.
Thanks,
Thank you very much for having us. It's been a pleasure to talk about all of this. So thank you. And thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it.
Great. Until next time.